Welcome back to the Morning Cuppa Podcast with me, Alan. Today, I'm joined by Steve Kirchell from KCS. In the show, Steve and I are taking a winding route through his career highlights, from driving to planning, then on to transport management. We touch on some of the skills Steve has developed over his 34-year career so far, and how being a people person is the single most important thing when it comes to transport management. Want help developing and adding those skills to your arsenal of techniques for transport management? I'd suggest you join a mentor group on the TMC and get weekly calls plus a private group chat with an experienced transport manager to help guide you whilst you make your first steps into the world of transport management. To find out more, go to tmcollective.co.uk and see how a TMC mentor can help you get ahead today. Anyway, thank you, Steve, for joining me today. This was a fun one, so let's get to it. We do go for a seamless transition when we hit record, but it does ignore the 20 minutes of preamble before we hit record. So yeah, Steve, thank you very much for joining me. For my audience, I know I'd like to do a quick introduction. Steve Kirchell from KCS is joining me today. I think I'll just throw the floor straight to you, essentially, Steve, and sort of where you're from, who are you, and a bit of background about yourself would be good for our audience.
Yeah, sure. So I'm from Maidstone in Kent. Was born there, kind of lived around there most of my life. Been at KCS now for 3 months, so I'm very much the new boy, which I absolutely hate being a new boy. I've come from a job where I was there for 6 years and people come to you for everything, and all of a sudden I know nothing.
You're going to them. You're going to other people, aren't you?
Questions and you know, and what's your name again, and what do you do again? So, but overall, they're a brilliant company to work for. Very supportive, very friendly.
Did they pay you to say that?
Yes, I've got a brown envelope just the other side of the screen. Just
cool, good, fantastic. So what do KCS actually do?
So it's Kent County supplies. So we supply stationery and education supplies to schools, libraries, government buildings. So KCC, Kent County Council, is one of our major shareholders. So we basically have their logo on our vehicles. So anything sort of government owned, we do. So lots of libraries, lots of schools. So didn't realise there was quite that many schools in Kent, but there is.
I must say, my little one's going to school in September. We got the email the other day of which school, and pre that, you didn't really know how many schools there were, but there's like literally within like a mile of my house, there's like 10 schools. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
you don't really realise. Yeah, it's such a big industry, but. Yeah, so I mean, why KCS? What drew you to them? Was it kind of just right place, right time, or?
I was looking for a change. I'd heard of them because when I started my career back in the 80s, I worked for KCS.
Surely not.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. And I knew of Kent County Supplies because I used to order from them. So I saw the job come up and I thought, how weird would it be if I worked there again? It's like I've come full circle.
Full circle, yeah.
And so I'm sort of wondering, is this the twilight of my career? You know, am I going to see my career out here?
It's not the worst thing to do, is it, though?
No, not at all. No, there are a lot worse places to be out there and working. Believe me, I've visited some of them. And as soon as I met them, you know, they were on my page. They were very much, you know, we are legal, we are compliant, we need somebody to manage that. And that kind of, you know, ticks all the boxes for me. You know, I don't want to work for people who don't want to do that, which I have done in the past, especially in my younger days. So that's kind of what drew me to it. And then the fact that they've just said, right, off you go, you know, do your job kind of thing. You know, they're not sitting on my shoulder. They trust me and my knowledge and my expertise and everything. So, yeah, I think I've definitely made the right move.
So did you replace someone, or were you kind of brought in as an expansion, or what was the sort of...
No, the previous transport manager had left a few months prior to that. So the ops manager had kind of been sort of trying to do that role. Yeah. And, you know, he's got a busy job anyway in running transport. You know, he got them through, but they needed someone to come in and proper take it by the reins. So a bit of catching up to do when I got in, but, you know, we're already, you know, we're up to speed. You know, the drivers have got a lot more knowledge on compliance and what they should be doing now.
How big is the fleet and the team that you manage?
So it's not massive. So we've got 19 vehicles. So we've got 13 7.5s, and then we've got 6 sprinters. So the sprinters are not tachograph, but obviously the 7.5s are.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you've got 7.5s or Arctics, the rules are there and they're to be obeyed. So it was just trying to remind them all of the rules and me discovering how little or how much they all knew.
Yeah. It's surprising how in every role, not just within driving and compliance, you can sort of deviate away from what you should be doing over time, just through lack of accountability, essentially. It's something we've my team and I have gone through a bit of a structural change in the last few weeks, and sort of brought in, I think Casper put it really nicely, he called it the accountability tree. Is everyone has something that they're accountable to and for, and I think it's very easy for things to just kind of deviate and get left by the wayside if no one's holding you to account. So I think it's important that you do that. So that's important. So I wanted to kind of let's wind the clock back to, I'm not going to say a date because I think
it's a long way back.
Yeah. How long we got? Let's strap in, guys. No. So I guess that with the new direction of the podcast, where we're interviewing kind of people who have had fair amount of life experience within transport and seeing if we can pass on some of those learnings to kind of new TMs, and even experienced ones that might not have worked in certain industries or certain ways. So that's kind of what we're doing. So the fact that you've got a career with multiple steps, is that the right way of saying it? I think that sounds okay.
Yes.
That sounds like I'm being polite.
We'll go with that.
Career with multiple steps. There you go. We'll take that. We want to kind of wind our way through your life and sort of see what you've learned along the way and sort of why you made certain decisions. So kind of let's cast our mind way back. How did you get into transport? Was it your first kind of job, or did you kind of come into it later in life?
No, well, quite young. I mean, when I left school, I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like probably 80% of people, I went through, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a racing driver. When I realised that wasn't going to pan out, I literally started working for KCC, and I literally ordered stationery, and I did photocopying, and I did filing, which again, people don't understand what filing is now, especially youngsters coming in. We had to
sort out your files on your computer. That's the same thing.
Yeah. Computers. What's one of them?
Yeah.
So I literally sort of plodded through my first few working years of just doing that, and then one day, a local HGV driving school had an open day. And invited people to come along, getting a truck and drive it. And I jumped in this Arctic, and the minute I drove it, I was hooked. I was like, this is great. And so started having lessons, found I loved it even more, and eventually passed my test. So this was back in the day when you could go from a car to a Class 1. So that's how long ago it was. And passed my Class 1 in 94. So a long time ago. And then the next problem was, how do I get a job? Because I was 22 at the time, and no one wanted to touch me. I was a youngster. I had no experience. I was in this 2-year experience loop. Yeah. How do I get experience if no one will give me a chance, like everybody can relate to?
Yeah.
So I ended up, because bear in mind, there was no internet, there was no email. I wrote to every single haulage company in Kent, every single one. One of them took me on. Everybody used to say to me, you haven't got enough experience. I need a guy who knows what he's doing. But one company took me on.
Who was that?
It was a company called Bosman Transport. They're not around anymore. So they were small company based in Ditton, just outside Maidstone. I knew of them because, ironically, I lived around the corner from them. So I obviously knew of them. And I turned up not knowing how to fill out a tachograph, not knowing how to do up a curtain, not knowing how to strap a load, because they don't teach you any of that back in the day. So I literally had to learn, as green as I was and as naive as I was, from the ground up, how to do the job.
Was it a supportive company to sort of do that?
They were good. I kind of get now why they took me on, because they wanted somebody they could mould. And probably did things that I probably shouldn't have done, but at the time I didn't know any different. I just thought, you do that, and just ran off and did it. When it was only later in life when people said, you can't do that, that's illegal. Because you, as a new driver,
do you want to elaborate on that, or do you not want to elaborate?
I can. I mean, this back in the day of paper tachographs, obviously, and you'd run out of time, and I'd say, look, I've got to park up, I'm out of time, and it was, just put another one in, I'll fill it out when you get back. and like being naive, I went, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Not realising what would have happened had I got stopped.
Yeah.
Or 1 o'clock forward 9 hours and then carry on. So I did that. You know, literally, if they'd said to me, drive the lorry off a cliff, I probably would have gone, oh, okay, that's legit.
Yeah.
But that's how green I was, because I was petrified of going into the industry. Going from a car to driving a fully laden class 1 is scary, especially for the first time when there's no one sitting next to you going, do this, do that, look at your mirrors, do that. It was a petrifying time, but at the same time, I loved it.
Yeah.
So I very quickly, after a few years, began to realise, hang on a minute, you know, I kind of need to stick next to the law, because if I lose my licence, I've lost my job.
Yes.
So,
you know, was that sort of experience of doing things not quite by the book, because you knew no better, did that shape your direction into transport management, or was there something else that caused that to happen?
Yes, it kind of did. I mean, although it wasn't great what I went through, I'm so glad I did, because you know, when now drivers sort of say to me about things that, you know, we could do, I'm like, no, we're not doing that, because I know, because I've done it. And I mean, I was there for 3 years, I think, and it was a case of, right, you do a couple of nights out a week, you know, you'll be out Monday night, you'll be out Thursday night, and you'll be home for the weekend. Well, it started like that, but it ended with me leaving Sunday afternoon and getting home Saturday morning. So I had enough, so decided to leave.
Yeah. I'm guessing at that stage of your life, in your early to mid 20s, that you got less of there's no family tying you down necessarily, like no children and stuff. Yeah. So you're able to do those, but it's not exactly great for your social life.
No, there's no social life. And even when you're out, you know, you're sleeping in lay-bys, you're getting hassle from people who you know, want to buy diesel off you, or what you got in the back, mate, or do you want to buy a camcorder, mate? And it was constant hassle, and you wake up and find little moons cutting your curtain where they've had a little peek in to see what you're carrying. Yeah. You know, and you think, God, this is dangerous. Yeah. You know, the facilities in services, I mean, they've not got much better, but you know, in the 90s, they were disgusting. You know, I'm not going in there to have a shower. I'll come out with more diseases than what I went in with. So, yes. It was a whole sort of, sorry.
I was saying, I don't think it's much better now, though, to be honest. So.
They're not. No. And yeah, you know, you turn up at the services and they want to charge you to park there, and you know, for what? You know, it's horrible. Yeah. But I'm glad I don't do it now, because there's much more traffic on the roads than when I was driving.
Yeah. We interrupt this program for a special report. Not really, just me again. So, you've done your CPC exam. Now, let's prepare for the real world of transport with the TMC Mentor Program. Join a mentor group on the TMC and get weekly calls plus a private group chat with an experienced transport manager to help guide you whilst you make your first steps into the world of transport management. To find out more, go to tmcollective.co.uk and see how a TMC mentor can help you get ahead. Anyway, that's enough from me. Now back to, well, me. Yeah. So when you left there, what did you go on to? Did you stay driving, or did you make the transition to transport management then?
No, out of sheer petulance, I decided, right, I'm going to drive vans for a bit. And I said, I'm not driving lorries anymore. It's rubbish. So I started driving for a parcel company. Okay. So I then went to doing 80 to 90 drops a day. And needless to say, it was very low pay for very long hours. And if I'd have stayed doing that, I probably wouldn't have a license, because you're expected to work
incentivized. Yeah.
So from there, then I went back to lorries again after my little stint as a white van man. And started driving again for a company called Swift, who then turned into Christian Salverson. So it's like sort of multi-drop, general haulage kind of stuff. And that's when I made the transition slowly into sort of management and supervisory experience.
How did that work? Was it just you kind of put your hand up for it, or there was an opening, or you naturally gravitated towards it because of maybe a bit more experience, or what?
I kind of created it myself, because I was always interested in sort of the route planning side of it and the management side. So what I would do is, when I got back off my run, I'd clock out, and then I'd spend 2 or 3 hours in the traffic office on my own time, and just learn everything. You know, start taking phone calls. You know, started inputting jobs, and then I would stay later, start route planning and things like that. So eventually, they kind of had no choice but to move me in there full time.
Yeah.
So, bit stubborn on my part.
Was it mostly you were just sort of like done of being on the road, or it was more exciting, or what sort of caused you to want to make the transition?
It was getting me down a little bit of the driving, only because you couldn't get anywhere fast, and the pressures that were going on you to be certain places, certain times. I mean, I was dragging trailers to docks, and it was, you've got to be there at this time, and you're stuck on the M1 and you can't get anywhere, and the pressure was getting too much. And but I'd always been interested in management, but I decided early on I don't think you can manage unless you've done
Unless
it.
you've done, yeah.
I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but that's how I've been brought up. How can I tell someone what to do if I've not been and done it myself, or could go and do it myself? So I think that's the thing. Background.
It's I think it's quite hard because you can become a transport manager without being a driver.
Yeah,
obviously you don't need. They're not mutually inclusive. If that's the right phrase, like you don't have to have gone one to the other. And I think it is hard because although, I mean, I'm full disclosure, I know people know, but I'm not. I drive a car. I don't drive lorries. I don't have my CPC. I'm not a transport manager, and I probably never will. Because my view is I can do better for my job by not being one. I feel I'm pretty knowledgeable. I talk to lots of people like yourself. I learn quite a lot, but I wouldn't profess to be an expert. I'd rather work with experts and talk to experts and not to be one myself. But the experience I tend to see is that the TMs that have come from a background of driving tend to have a better grasp on their drivers because they know when they're bullshitting to a certain extent, and absolutely, you know what they're saying, and you can kind of understand it.
You can't go near the schools when the children are out, for obvious reasons. So sort of between 8:30 and 9 o'clock, and then again 2:30 to 3 o'clock. Yeah, it makes it tricky. So it's the drivers know this. I mean, a lot of the drivers that work here have been here a long time. They're very experienced, but it's the new guys that are coming in that think, oh, it's just multi-drop. But delivering to schools is a different animal.
Yeah.
And it's trying to make them understand that, that safety's got to come first, especially when you're reversing a vehicle into a school. The things that could go wrong, you don't even want to think about.
Yeah.
So
did you find it was hard for you to kind of get up to speed with that? Did it take a while for you to really get that, or was it quite obvious straight away? I mean, it is obvious when you think about it, but like I think when we spoke, it's your drivers have a certain way of doing things because they have to work within quite narrow windows and stuff. Did you find that took a bit of you getting used to?
It did, and I wasn't here very long, and I went and started going out with them because for me to understand it, I wanted to go and see it. I can't see that from behind the desk, so I started to go out with them, and you can see the issues they've got. I mean, even to the point where you're delivering and you're walking through a playground with like sack barrels of, say, copy paper, and kids don't get out of the way. In fact, they run at you. It's quite a dangerous place actually trying to deliver during school break time into a school.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it was getting a good understanding from them. But then because they're very experienced, a lot of them, they know where to go. They know who to see. They know who to ask for. Or, it doesn't go to the reception. It goes to the caretaker's office and things like that. So, it's again, although logistics is A to B, no matter what your commodity is, there's slight differences to whatever you're delivering.
Yeah, definitely.
And this was a good eye-opener for that.
Yeah. So going back to kind of, you'd made the transition from the road and into the office doing more planning. At what point did that sort of become, I think you said it was because they couldn't kick you out essentially. Yeah. Is that what really kind of kick-started kind of down the route you're down now then?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I learned early on that all the drivers that I thought were my mates, very quickly, as soon as you become one of them, that they're not quite as chatty with you anymore. And when you have to start telling them what to do or asking them what to do, they don't like it, because hang on, you were one of us, but we all work for the same company.
Yeah, we're trying to do the same thing.
Yeah, but it sort of ignited the kind of management spark, thinking, actually, let's see how far I can take this. Because I literally started and I was a planner. And then I worked night shift for 3 years planning the night routes, which, not ideal, but you kind of have to do what you need to do to get on. Yeah. I knew nights wasn't a full-time sort of thing for me, but it had to be done for me to get the experience that I needed. So, and then unfortunately I had to leave there because there was no positions on days, and nights was becoming a bit of a struggle. I never got used to it.
Yeah, I guess you don't really sleep during the day, do you? Really, it's
No,
hard to shift your body clock that way.
Yeah, you lay awake thinking I need to sleep, and it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I can see why a lot of people that work shifts rely on substances to get themselves through the day and night, which is, I mean, dangerous for anyone, but within like driving and transport, it's not ideal.
Definitely not.
So you moved from there to kind of find a day role. Where did you move to?
From where did I go from there? I went to TNT Logistics, which again are no longer. So there's a theme developing everywhere I work. They kind of disappear. So that's just put me off being hired ever again.
It puts anyone off hiring you, I think, is a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll edit this bit out.
yeah. Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't a complete day role actually. So I went from night shift to working 2 to 10. Which was a bit better, but it still wasn't what I wanted. And again, it was a planning role. Now, all these planning roles introduced me to new planning systems, and trying to understand that what the computer says is not necessarily what the driver can do. And again, because I had the driver background, I could quite easily look at that and go, well, the computer says you can do that in 8 hours, but I know it's going to take you longer.
Yeah.
And it was, I know planners are kind of, you could be a hero and a villain all in one go. The drivers either hate you or love you. So one of the things I've found, and I wish planners had done this with me, is if I had a particularly nasty route, I would talk to the driver the night before and say, look, it's a bit of a naughty route tomorrow. It's a lot of drops. Are you okay with it? And I'd get them on side the night before rather than them turn up in the morning and throw a massive wobbly, who planned this, and, throw the toys out the pram. You leave a driver leaving the depot in that sort of mood is end one way.
Yes, it's obviously not great for performance and stuff. I mean, I think one of our previous guests, Vicky from eSitu, she did. I don't think we mentioned it on the podcast, but she's a kind of academic around hazard perception and hazard awareness.
Right.
And I think I might have to dig it out, Elizabeth, if you're listening. You need to dig out and remind me to dig this out. I probably won't. But if I do, a study they did on, I think it was anger and stress on response times and behavioural kind of hazard perception and stuff. And it does it's interesting reading. It makes a big difference to how people perceive risk, which is really not what you want. So having calm drivers. So I think, but it's going back to communication. Like if you just talk to people, I think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, and I think that got to me as a driver, that you'd literally come in and get your work. And if you had an issue with it, no one wanted to listen. There's your keys, there's your work, go and get on with it.
Yeah.
So that taught me to not do that. I didn't want to have my drivers feeling like that. And I kind of built that from back then, which was now we're sort of in the early 2000s, all the way through my career, is that I asked the drivers to talk to me, or I'll go and talk to them. And it's hard to have the difficult conversations, especially if a driver says, I need to be finished by 2:00, but he's not going to be back till 4. Let's talk to him about it first before him, potentially walking out the job the next day when he finds out what he's got. Yeah. So I
think it's, just talking and being aware, I think, of people's kind of, expectations and mood and behavior. I know you could sort of say, oh, snowflakes, just suck it up and deal with it, but actually it's not quite as easy as that. It's people are people. Like I had a situation even just this week where I was away on holiday for a week and the team maybe didn't operate to quite as high a standard or high output as maybe I was expecting, and I kind of gathered all the information when I got back from holiday, and I went in on Monday morning and I made it uncomfortable for a few minutes. So you need to know that this is not appropriate. I don't think people, I've got children, I've got a kid, and disciplining is important. You do need to lay down boundaries. People need boundaries, especially in the workplace, not just like in life, but in the workplace, you do need to have boundaries of what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. But it's not laying into them and having a character analysis, a character assassination and shouting at them. That doesn't get you anywhere. It's just saying, look, this is not on, but this is what we're going to do. And then you move on, and then you draw. And if I'd come in on the Monday or the Tuesday morning this week, sorry, because of bank holidays, if I come in and I'd sort of seen this happen, I would have thrown it out the pram. I would have had such a reaction. But because I got this on the Friday and I had a whole weekend to sort of process and go, actually, no, there's a lot of things, and I gathered more information, and there was some reasonable explanations as to why it happened as well. Not totally, but I understood. People have got things going on in their personal lives as well. Like, okay, that does have an impact on performance at work. Aware of it, you can then kind of work with it. And I kind of made it uncomfortable for 5 minutes because I think it was important that it did feel like that. But then I said specifically, okay, line in the sand. That's where we're at now. What we're doing moving forward. And that was it. And apart from repeating it on the podcast now for people to hear again, I've not mentioned it since. It's like, no, we just move on and it's fine. So I think, just being open and honest about things, I think, is really important.
Yeah, it is massively. And it's the old 1970s attitude, isn't it? About where the boss drags the driver across the yard and, gives him the talking to. And you don't do that. No. We've moved on a lot since then.
Yes.
And it's about having empathy for your drivers. If you've got 19 drivers, you've got 19 different sets of personalities, 19 different sets of problems.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to turn up to work happy on a Monday morning. Some people are going to be a bit off. So you sort of think, hang on, you're normally really cheery and happy. You're not today. Are you okay? And it's having that conversation.
Yeah.
And I think it's massively important to do that.
So do you find that you have really good... I know you've only been there 3 months, but I'm guessing you try and operate an open door policy to a certain extent and let people come to you with their problems. Yeah,
I've said it to all of them. I mean, when I started, obviously they didn't know me and they were trying to work me out. And I started by just being really open and honest. And say any questions you got, come and talk to me. If you want to know what I have for dinner, come and ask me. I'll share everything with you just to try and gain their trust.
So what did you have for dinner last night?
I had chicken and rice last night. It was
very nice. It's very nice. There you go.
You can edit that out as well.
No, that's staying in. That as well. I ask all the hard-hitting questions here on the Morning Cuppa Podcast.
That was a tough one.
that was a tough one. So we'll go back. So you made the transition to that 2 till 10 planning role. When were you a CPC holder back at that point, or were you still kind of working towards that, or what?
It was with TNT that they put me through my CPC.
Okay.
So, they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said, yeah, of course I'll do it. And then I realised how much work was involved. So they wouldn't pay for me to have lessons or anything. So they literally gave me a folder like that and said, learn that and you'll pass your exam. So I did it home study. I did.
You passed first time? Okay.
Well, okay. I kind of did. I went to do the exam and I got caught in traffic and I literally turned up like with that much time left to spare, sat the first multiple choice and did the rest of the exam. When I got my results, I'd failed the easy first multiple choice and passed everything else. So I think when I sat down, I was a bit like, God, I was stressed out. So so then I obviously resat the first module again and passed that. So sort of passed.
Sort of.
I would have done had the traffic not have been there.
Yeah. So my dog ate my homework. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah. So was there any support within the organisation to kind of get you through that? Like, do you have any mentors or like people to work with, or was it just literally off you go?
My boss, he was obviously a CPC holder. He was the operations manager, I think, at the time, and he was very good at explaining things. I'd come into him and say, I don't quite understand this, and he'd explain it in a context that I would understand. Yeah. So he was instrumental in me getting through it, I think. It's a tough exam, and while you're studying for it, it does take over your life. You've got formulas and things running through your head the whole time. But when I found I passed, obviously elation. And then the hard reality of, oh my God, I've now got to use this. And people are going to assume I know everything.
Yeah. And then you also, I guess because you came from a background from driving and working in a transport office, there's not a big bump, but a lot of people do find that the CPC doesn't prepare you for the real world of transport management. It's just a bit of paper, lots of boxes being ticked, but then you got to get into the real world and do it. Did you find that particularly hard, or did you find that you had a good grounding in understanding already that you didn't find it quite as hard, or not?
There were parts of it. I knew there was a financial aspect to it. like pricing a job up with 20% profit and all that, which I got to grips with quite easily. But it was the law side of it, because the CPC prepares you to run your own business.
Yeah.
It's effectively an A-level in business studies. So
Yeah.
when there was a lot of it that I struggled with, even things that I thought I knew. So when I got to driver's hours, I thought, I don't even need to study that. I know that. And when I took a mock paper, I was embarrassed. I can't even believe I'm telling you now. But then I realized, actually, I need to go back and revisit it. And a lot of it is because the legislation changes so quick and so often.
Yeah.
If you last drove 10 years ago, you don't know the legislation now. It's changed. So that was a bit of a learning curve and taught me a lesson. Don't take your knowledge for granted. Always, measure twice, cut once.
Yeah. I try and do that with my DIY. It's why I don't do DIY anymore. I can't be trusted. I don't think you can see I've got a heart. I almost lost a finger. If you see on the screen there, I was measuring twice and cutting once, but that cut once was through my finger with a circular saw. So there you go. Can't be trusted with power tools. So did you find kind of the transition back into transport management after the exam kind of okay? Did you have the support post pass, as it were, or were you then thrown, okay, you can now go be the TM, off you go?
Well, I was lucky because they didn't want me to be the TM. They just wanted to develop me and
that's good.
The CPC. TNT Logistics at the time, they had a lot of contracts, and I think the plan was to sort of put me out to another contract that needed a TM, so I could start managing it. But I ended up leaving like a year or so after that, so we never got to find that out. So.
Was that just moving on, or was there other reasons for leaving?
It was partly moving on, but partly the 2 to 10 shift again was taking a time, and I did that shift for 3 years. It's great. You don't have to get up early in the morning, but you can't go out in the evening, because you're at work. And although I worked 2 to 10, if there was a problem, I'd stay and finish it. So sometimes we get home till midnight, but that's just how I am. So it was to take another job that was actually a day shift, which was my first proper day shift in transport management, which was great.
Yeah. So where and when was that?
So that was, I think, about 2006, I think it was now. So I moved to a car transport company. Again, never done cars before.
Yeah.
So I had a very, very, very steep learning curve in the car transporter industry, because the unions have a heavy influence in that. And wasn't prepared for that when I went there. So you can't just give people work. If the union say that driver doesn't have to do it, he doesn't do it. And that was a shock.
Yeah.
They work very hard, car transporter drivers, I discovered, and at the risk of getting lynched, except on a Friday when they want to go home.
Foot down Friday.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, if you wanted to, do a couple of collections on the way down, nope, I'm coming back. And the union will back them. So that was again another steep learning curve. But then that's why you change jobs, isn't it? You change jobs to learn,
exactly, and
improve.
So how did you manage those sort of like more complex drivers?
Well, after I discovered that banging my fist on the desk and shouting at them doesn't help. It's just, again, talking to them. I mean, when I said earlier that you need to talk to your drivers and get the best out of them, it took me a few years to learn that.
Yeah.
Because, I'd had some bosses that were literally like that. They would slam their fists on the desk and make you do stuff. And I think you take a little bit from all the bosses that you work for.
Yeah.
Ideally the best bits, and you kind of use a little
avoid
bit of
the worst bits.
That's it. Yeah. So, once I'd sort of grown up a little bit and got, the temper tantrums out my way, I discovered that you get so much more out of people if you talk to them. If you say, look, I'm really help me out if you pick this car up for me, and you help me out, I help you out. And, and I still do that, today. If there's something that, it's going to cost somebody a couple of hours, I'll make it up to you on Friday. We'll get you back a bit early so you can start your weekend. And I think it works better like that.
Yeah. Do you find that I think you're gonna kind of, something I wrote down earlier was, do you find that your mindset has changed as you've kind of got older and matured through your years? And I think the answer is clearly yes. It is. You realise kind of, shouting doesn't work.
No, I'm not sure about the maturing bit, but I do my best.
Being polite.
Thanks, thank you. If somebody shouted at me and said, "Do this now," I'd get my back up straight away. And but people are all the same. Talk to people how you want to be talked to yourself. Some drivers do, push the limit, and you have to go away, count to 10 and breathe. But I have learned, to not bring myself down to that level again and start shouting at people. I'm not perfect. It's happened.
Yeah, I can relate. Yeah.
Then I'm annoyed with myself because, I've let myself go down to that level. But
there we are, all human, and it's something that, I mean, my wife says this quite a lot. She works in construction, and so she works in a very male-dominated environment, and she's female, and there's quite a few women in her office. But if a woman cries, "Oh, don't get so emotional," as if anger and shouting is not an emotion. Yeah. It's just like it's not helpful. Like but equally, you are allowed to show your emotions.
Of course.
Being angry and shouting, you don't want to do it, but we are just human at the end of the day. It is an emotion and it does come out. I must say, I started going to see a therapist 2 years ago now, I think it was. I started going to see a therapist every week. And it was because of my anger issues towards my 2-year-old, which is the most unreasonable thing possible. You can't be angry at a 2-year-old because she is 2. But she knows how to push buttons, and she goes, "Wind you right up." And I found that seeing a therapist and being quite open about that was massively beneficial to me. Like, we talk about, I think she mentioned about the window of tolerance of like how much you can take of a thing to stress you out and make you angry without actually affecting you. And I realized if I could just widen that, I didn't have to cope with it. I just had a wider tolerance of what wouldn't make me upset. It sounds all wishy-washy bollocks and stuff, but to me, it kind of, I'm able a lot more now to control my emotions because I know that I have a wider tolerance. And there's lots of things that go for that, but I do a lot less shouting now. And it's so much nicer for everyone, including me. Of course it is.
I'm sure your 2-year-old thinks that as well.
Well, yeah, she's now 4.5 and winds me up even more. But there we go. That's just it. I mean, I wouldn't change it for the world. It's what happens when you try and raise young, independent women. It's like you want to raise an independent woman, but not want to tell you to do something. But then she doesn't do it. Like, but not yet. Exactly. Yeah. Do it when you're told to. No, that doesn't help at all. That's not the point. So you moved on to TNT, got your training, kind of went and found the new job, an actual day role. What was that kind of entailed?
Again, it was more of a planning role, but I had a team of drivers that I looked after. Okay. So, they would be the ones that came to me with their issues. And it was kind of the first time that had happened to me. And that's when the more of the emotions came out, where people would come talk to you about anything. Not necessarily their work or the run that they've got, but they start to open up about maybe things that are going on at home or things that are going on in their personal life. And, I was still trying to get my head around being the person who people come to for that, because normally I'm quite an introvert person, but the job taught me to come out of myself a little bit and just listen and empathize. And, you haven't got all the answers. So, I mean, that sort of got my passion going for management even more, because I actually thought, I could help people. Yeah. People come to work, okay, I'm going to give you a work to do, but at the same time, I can help you do it the best way possible.
Yeah.
It's the thing, like happy staff, they'll go away, they'll look after your customers.
Yeah, and I think, the motivation for doing that, is it to make sure your customers and the business runs effectively and efficiently, or is it because you care about people? They don't have to be mutually exclusive. I know that, like, what we're trying to do with Hub and the podcast and the TMC, everything we're doing within the company now is trying to improve standards within the sector, like massively driven, because I think transport logistics is the backbone to the country. Like, we would grind to a halt, literally, if you didn't exist. Like, it would be a nightmare. And that's all really important. And the TMC, our kind of new collective we've launched, is again around providing transport managers with that kind of community around them to feel less isolated and feel supported. But actually, I'm doing it for my team as well. And my team, my kind of my staff, I look after them. I try and make sure that I'm supportive of them, because they're the people you can see and you can actually kind of feel how you're having an effect. And I think it's really important that you don't have a negative impact on the people you're working with, because otherwise they're just, well, they're not going to be useful to you, but actually from a moral point of view as well. Like, I think it's important that you look after people.
Yeah, because if you don't, the problem's going to come back tenfold, when they've gone out in a mood, had a bad day, and they're even more angry when they come back. Sooner or later, you've got to deal with that problem.
Yeah. From a selfish point of view, it's still you dealing with it. But I think it's crucially, I personally, it's just a human kind of response, is to try and be what it should be, to be kind to other people and to look after other people, just for no other reason than it's kind of the right thing to do. That kind of, it sometimes gets lost when you've got busy runs to do, and kind of lots of the phones ringing, and you've got a driver calling sick, and suddenly it's all very stressful. But actually, I think it's important that there's still people behind these wheels, and they're the people that sort of need to look after. So you moved on to there. When was this then? Where did we get to? I've kind of lost now in your journey.
So I think, I'm getting lost myself. It's hard to think that far back.
This is more recent memory now. This is.
It is, yeah. But when you get a bit older, your memory's, not what it was.
Sorry, I forgot about Steve. That's your name. Sorry, yeah, I completely forgot. Forgot your name.
Yeah, so I think we're around sort of 2010. So I think I tend to sort of stay in places for around 3 years. That seems to be where I'm at, because again, I was at the car transporter place for 3 years.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, and then I moved to Marley Plumbing and Drainage, which were the plumbing suppliers in Lenham in Kent, and I think I was actually there for 6 years. So I doubled my length of time. So and this is when I sort of properly did dive into sort of transport management, and properly looking after the trucks, the people, understanding how it all works, how compliance works, how important it is to do it. OCRS scores, things like that. All of a sudden, hang on, this is me now. I've got to do this. Yeah. So, I'd sort of, every time I've moved, I had made a step up. I'd gained more experience. I'd gained more knowledge. So I think that's why I stayed so long, because I progressed. I wasn't in the same role the whole way through. I literally went as a planner. I was there as a planner, and then by the end of it, I was the transport manager. So, there was a good progression there. Which I enjoyed.
Yeah. So what did you do after that? Let's kind of take you to, I guess we're almost at COVID at this point now, aren't we? We kind of made our way to.
Not quite. Yeah, I did. Yeah. So I then worked for Nolan Transport. They're an Irish company, Irish logistics. So I was an outbase in Alresford. Obviously, they're based in Ireland. And then they said to me, "We want you to do your international CPC." So I said, "Great, I don't mind doing that." And I think I'd missed by 2 or 3 weeks the cutoff where you could just sit your international section as a CPC.
Okay.
Had to do the entire lot all over again.
How did you find that?
It was still hard, but obviously not as hard as the first time. But it's still a lot to remind yourself of. Obviously, things have changed a little bit, because I passed my first CPC in 2001. Yeah. And then we're like sort of 10, 12, 13 years later, and I've got to do it again. And obviously legislation has changed. And
there's vast majority of bits that you don't use as well.
Of course, yeah. There's a lot. I mean, it's like school, isn't it? A lot of stuff that you learn at school, you don't use. You don't use algebra. I wouldn't have thought. So
not that much, no.
Yeah. I found it okay. I mean, I did pass. I passed it sort of first time. So
first time or first time?
No, proper first time.
No traffic this time. No excuses. Cool.
My pencils were sharpened.
Did you actually kind of have some like nightmare the night before, thinking you're going to get stuck in traffic again? Did that run through your mind?
God, I was there ridiculously early. I was there like an hour before the exam and sat in my car. I refused to be late for this one, and it paid off. So I was nice and relaxed.
Yeah. So maybe it was you being late was what caused you to fail the first time. There you go.
I think it was, because I hate being late for anything. Yeah, it stresses me out, and I have to be early. Even if the other half says we've got to be out at 7, but it doesn't really matter if we're not there at 6:59. I'll freak out.
And the thing is, it sometimes comes and bites you in the arse a little bit. So I'll say my 4-year-old, she's kind of got birthday parties as nursery and school friends and all that sort of stuff. And if you know the parents of the child that you're going to, it's kind of okay to be the first one there. But if you don't know anyone there and you turn up first at the house with the party, you're then standing awkwardly. It's like we had a party at the weekend, and I'm like, we're not getting there at the start. Let's get there at least 20 minutes late. And we were exactly 20 minutes late. Like we were on time to the new deadline that I'd set because I don't want to be late to something, but I didn't want to be the first one in the room. I didn't want to be there, kind of my child awkwardly standing in the corner while I stand awkwardly in the corner. And like, no, don't want that. So I get that not being late thing though. I really do. I hate being late myself. So,
well, that's a new one. I was late, but I was on time. I like that.
I was on time. Oh, yeah. So that's when you say it like that, it sounds like I made it all up. It doesn't make sense, but it did make sense to me. So you passed your international. Was that kind of? Did you need it? Did you need it for the role for Nolan's? Or
I didn't need it for the role, but I think they had grand plans to get me more involved in that side of it. But so the outbase role I was working, it wasn't overly busy. It was only ever a temporary place for them to be.
Okay.
And I knew that, eventually it would close down. They offered that I could go and, work in Ireland, and we considered it, because Ireland's a lovely place. I would still go out there tomorrow if I could. I really like it over there. But, the kids were at a difficult school age. It wouldn't have been fair on them to move them. So, I had to leave, so unfortunately.
So where did you go after then?
So then I took a bit of a career swap because I was getting a bit disillusioned with transport. I've been doing it a lot of years. I was just, when you've been doing something for so long and you just think, I need a change.
Yeah.
So I went and worked in a warehouse for a year.
Okay.
I literally went and worked for a carpet warehouse, and I learned how to cut carpet, and I got my reach truck license and my forklift license, and I literally did that for a year until I started to get the hunger again for transport.
That's good. So it didn't disappear entirely then.
No, but it worked. It did. I needed the break. So I couldn't just take a year off. But I needed to go and do something completely different, and it really did fire me up to get back into transport. Nice.
So what was then after that?
So the next one, which is the job before now, you'll be pleased to hear, was at Matthew Clark, who they do drinks. They're drinks wholesaler, so alcoholic drinks and soft drinks. And I was started as a transport controller. Worked up to I was operations manager, transport operations manager before I left. And again, CPC holder. Yeah. Again, different sorts of problems with different sorts of deliveries. Obviously, delivering to pubs, very tricky.
So you went from pubs to schools. That's the next transition. That's a good transition. I guess they still have windows, and you've got lots of people like tottering around, not really knowing where they're walking. So it's I guess it's fairly similar, actually.
It kind of is. I mean, when I've had a few, the mentality actually is the same.
Well, exactly, yeah.
And it's tricky. HGV, town centres. The risks are there massively. But I enjoyed it. It was a really good. It was a good learning curve. It was my first proper, almost senior role that I think I had.
Yeah.
So again, it was more progression for me, which was great. And obviously, then COVID hit, and we had to go through the pandemic. And believe it or not, we ended up being key workers because old people's homes and care homes and places like that, they drink a lot of gin. So we operated, although on a much smaller scale, through the pandemic. And I was one of the ones. So corner shops.
Yeah, I guess it just because I guess you don't just supply to pubs; you supply to anything that sells booze.
Yeah.
So
and as the pandemic progressed, more and more pubs were ordering as people found ways around it, to do takeaway and things like that.
Yeah, and Scotch eggs for a full sit-down meal and stuff. Yeah, I remember that.
One, yeah. Then eat out to help out
And
happened, we got busy for a week before they realised, we can't do that. So
How did you plan for that? Like in terms of there was such. I know obviously within hospitality there is peaks and troughs. Obviously, Christmas is busy, bank holidays must be busy, holidays are busy, that sort of stuff. But because the pandemic, it was kind of in, out, like lockdown, tears, open, closed. Obviously, from a working perspective, it was hard enough just employing people, working out where the fuck they should work. Like, are you at home? Are you in? You out? But actually, if you're supplying to operate to organisations that open and close, did you find there was real kind of it was really lumpy in terms of what was needed to be done, like jobs?
It was. I mean, it was petrifying to start with because no one knew what was going on, and at one point we thought we'd turn up to work and the padlock would be on the gates, and we folded because we can't sell to pubs and nightclubs and restaurants, which is your core business. So we'd gone from getting rid of 120 ton a day to 200 kilos. That's all we had. We had one crew working the whole way through. But we soon discovered that as people found ways to get the booze out there, I mean, it didn't go anywhere near how it was beforehand, but the tonnage started to creep up a little bit. And there was a glimmer of hope where we think, oh, it's going to end. And when Eat Out to Help Out happened, we thought, oh, we've done it, we survived. And of course, it all shut down again after that. But we'd already learned lessons, so obviously the government were helping businesses as well with furlough and everything else. So we knew we could weather the storm, and we did, luckily. With no job losses. So,
that's
and
good.
then of course when it got busy again, it was like, whoa, can we go back to lockdown? It's so much easier during then. But that's with hindsight. At the time, it was scary because we didn't know what was going to happen.
I think it. I mean, I guess it's for my generation anyway. It's the closest thing I've ever got to like a world war in terms of like massive kind of impact on the whole of society. And it's like you look back at like these things like World War II was 6 years long. Oh, you could hunker down for 6 years, but at the time you didn't know it was 6 years. And the same with lockdowns. Like we initially thought, 3 weeks in March 2020, fantastic. Get a little bit of a holiday. Oh, it's fun. Oh, don't we like sourdough? Oh, banana bread. That's great fun. and then you realise it's not. And then it's kind of in and out and in and out. And obviously, I think it was this week, the World Health Organization has now actually officially announced that the pandemic is over now. And we've now kind of come out the other side. But I'm glad we're out of it. I didn't like the uncertainty. Like it wasn't good for my mental health, especially with the toddler running around at the time.
Yeah, I'm sure. And a lot of people struggle with it. I mean, drivers calling me all the time saying, do you know what's happening? Do you know, when are we coming back? And I couldn't answer that question, so it was just keeping in touch with them, saying, ringing them, are you okay? Dropping them a quick message saying, everything all right? Do you need anything? Well, it was scary times. But again, as a manager, you don't know what's happening. But you're the one they turn to.
You have to manage your own kind of emotions as well to make sure you don't have that impact on them. Because I say we were a team of 3 when lockdown hit. We were quite small, and then we kind of expanded during COVID, and like various schemes got us to next levels and stuff. But like I've had to keep my emotion in check. Like it's hard because you're meant to be the smile and the face, and to motivate people, not to bring doom and gloom. And you learn very quickly. I mean, my resilience over the last 3 years has grown massively. Having to deal with the uncertainty of COVID, of what's going to happen, like having to like move from an office to remote and back end. It's not quite the same as obviously drivers being furloughed, but it's trying to change your entire business model overnight because you're being remote is quite a shift. So the resilience you get, but you've got to have that outward looking face of it's fine, we're okay. You're crying inside, but it's fine, we're okay, to keep the kind of the wheels moving forwards, as it were. So why did you leave there? It sounds like you had a great crack there. Like, what was it just for next challenge, or?
It was. I mean, I hit the milestone birthday. I hit 50, and I thought, I really want to work for myself. Like, a lot of people dream of it. Obviously you're living the dream. But
thank you. I think.
But you do think, I'd love to work for myself, and I'd got ahead of myself in my head and go, God, I could work 4 days a week and things like that. I wanted that kind of lifestyle. So I left with the view of becoming an ETM. So I'd done all my research, was all fired up, was motivated, went out there looking for work. And there's lots of work out there, but it wasn't paying what I needed, not what I wanted, because obviously I've still got to support the family.
Yeah.
So I had to earn a certain level, and it frustrated me because, as a transport manager and an O license holder, you are legally responsible for that fleet.
Yeah.
You're not there to do the photocopying.
Yeah.
I've done that bit. I've done that. I know. So
yeah,
it did shock me that people weren't prepared to pay the money for it. But I don't think they realised what they were getting for that money. You weren't just a name on an O license, which some people did want.
Yeah.
Oh, you'll just be the O license holder. Pop in a couple of times a week, sort of thing. And I'm like, no. If I'm going to do this, I want to know exactly where you're at, what you're doing, and what needs to change.
Yeah.
And maybe I think I was unlucky because I've spoken to several ETMs who are very successful. They've got some really good clients and they love it. Unfortunately, maybe I didn't give it long enough, and I think it was the fear of not being able to earn the money to support.
Yeah.
That I thought, right, okay, this is not going to work for me, or I'm just not ballsy enough to stick with it.
It's a lifestyle choice you've got to make to become a business owner. You don't do it for the freedom and flexibility. Because I don't have a boss. It's great. Now you have lots of bosses. Every customer is your boss. And holidays, paid holidays, what are they? Paid paternity leave. I was back at work after 4 days of my little one being born. It's a double-edged sword. I mean, I genuinely wouldn't change it for the world. I love it. I actually love what I do. You wouldn't still do it if you didn't enjoy it, but you don't do it necessarily immediately for that lifestyle. You have to kind of build to that point to then give you the lifestyle you want. And it takes a special sort of stubborn to stick at it. And again, I'm very lucky. I've got a very successful wife that earns a lot of enough money to cover me when I was setting this up, and so didn't need to have an income. So it means you can be a bit more aggressive in how you do things, and sort of operate to a different level. So it's tough. And it does take, I think a lot of people, when they move into it, they tend to take on a customer on the side of the job. So they'll have a full-time job and take on maybe a friend who's got an owner operator or something, just kind of do half a day on a Saturday just to doing anything properly. It's just, but also it's a way of dipping the toe in the water without having to take that big plunge. So maybe that could have been a different way. So how long did you last at being an ETM?
Literally 3 months. It was, but after the first month, it was very clear to me that this is not going to work. And maybe I should have done, exactly what you said. And that thought has occurred to me since. Yeah. I should have got it going as a bit of a side hustle first and then made the transition. But I was probably a little bit too gung ho. But having said that, I'm glad I did it because I've ticked the box. I know what it's like out there, and it's led me to where I am now. So,
well, exactly, yeah.
Had I not made a jump, I wouldn't have been here. So, it all ends well, really.
Yeah.
So,
and obviously, go.
Yeah, I was going to say there are certainly some hauliers out there that I would not want to work for. I've learned that from being an ETM. So
yes, I think that's
naming names.
No, we don't name names. Well, sometimes we name names on here, but no, we don't. At the end of the day, as an ETM, you need to learn very quickly how to spot those operators you don't want to work with, and that is a skill in itself. But as you say, you've come through. I mean, I wasn't keeping a tally, but many companies, and you learn what's a good one, what's not a good one, and you learn what red flags are. And I think you can sum it up really. It's about communication. If people are willing to communicate with you, then everything comes a lot easier. If they're willing to communicate and listen to what you're saying, then I think it's fine. But it's when they become obtuse and difficult and argumentative and want to put you just as a name on the O license, it's like that, not worth the hassle. So
and it's not worth the risk of a prison sentence,
or exactly
having that on your conscience, that one of the trucks have gone out unroadworthy, had an accident, and that's your fault.
I couldn't live with myself for that. So wow. So how are things at KCS right now then? Obviously you've had 3 months to sort of get to grips. Are you feeling kind of up to speed now? You're saying before we got on the call that there's lots of systems that you're learning. Do you feel you're there now, thereabouts, or not yet?
Yeah, I'm guessing now. I have the odd moment where I think I've got this, I get it all now, and then someone will say, "Have you done this?" I'm like, "Oh no, what's that?" And then I learn something more. But all credit to them, they've not dumped all this on my lap in one go in the first week and said, "Right, this is what we do." They've been very good at drip feeding me things to do.
Yeah.
So I didn't get scared and go running for the hills. So which is a great way.
I guess because they're not they're never a failing haulier. They've always wanted to do things properly. So it's like they're not gonna they don't set you up to fail. They're setting you up to succeed because they themselves want to succeed.
Yeah. And when I had the interview, I asked what's the OCRS score, and said, "Oh, we're green." And I said, "Oh, that's really good." And he just said, "We want to be invisible. We want to go to the next level up," and that excited me. It's just like they really want to do this. So
have you looked at recognition then?
That's one of the things that we're looking at doing. So it's going to take some work, but we can do it. And that's what excites me about the job. They don't just want someone to come in and keep it ticking over. They want someone to come in and bring it up. Yeah. Because one of the great things about the company is the relationship the drivers have with their customers. That's why people order from us. They get the same driver. He knows where to go. He has a chat about the family and he moves on. That's one of our big selling points. And again, they sold it to me as well. They're really keen on making their employees happy. And like I said earlier, if you're happy, you're going to go out and keep your customers happy. Yeah. And it works.
It does indeed. So that was a good journey through your life history. I've enjoyed that path. It's the first time we've done that sort of chronological kind of route through. I know you are. I'm guessing you're going to get your drivers and your co-workers to listen to this. They're going to know all of your inner secrets and history now.
Yeah, I've probably shared too much, but
that's fine.
It's funny because when people look at my CV, they say, "Cool, you've had a lot of jobs," and then I say, "Yeah, but I've been working for 34 years." And I stay a good few years at every firm. The only reason I've moved is to progress. Yeah. So actually, when you look at it, no, I haven't. I've not been in the job 6 months and left and so on. Yeah. So, I'd almost have to justify it because, my CV's it's getting tight now to get on 2 sheets of A4. So,
well, I guess you can sort of like, because I've read a lot of CVs. Like we've gone through recruitment drives over the last few years, and you read a lot of CVs, and the ones you can look at them and go, "You got no experience." It's size 16. Yeah. You put on that you just play football with your friends at the weekend. That's one of your hobbies. Okay, cool, that's fine. I'm not going to discount you, but you've got no experience, and so we can work on that. But then it's like there's all the other side of people put everything on. Like I've got my 5 meters swimming badge and all this sort of stuff. It's like, I don't need that. That's not relevant to the role. So maybe it's worth looking and seeing. I mean, everything you've done is relevant to your role, but it's whether do you need to put down every single job? I don't know. Just a thought. Yeah. I think just to kind of round up, I think I was just looking at the time. Bloody hell, we've been over an hour now. Shall we? I've got one last question to ask, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. I think with our new sort of direction of working with our new product, that we're supporting transport managers in kind of greater detail with the TMC. What's one piece of advice you would give either former self or a new transport manager? What's one sort of piece? What's one nugget of advice you would give to an inexperienced TM?
I would say if we take the compliance side of it out of the way, because all TMs should obviously know that it's learning to be a good people person. That is the key to your success. If you don't want to be the boss that stamps their feet and shouts and slams the doors, you want to be somebody that people can come to, even if they've made a mistake. If we have drivers sometimes that know they've had an infringement, and they'll come and tell me. Rather than me find it out when I do the analysis, they come and tell me, which is great because they know they've done it,
which is also great.
Yeah, it shows they've got an awareness, and also they're not scared to come and say, "I've messed up, I've done this." Yeah. And so you've got to be empathetic. I don't tell people what to do. I ask people what to do. Obviously, there are times where you do have to be a bit stronger, but generally, if you ask someone else to do it, they'll go away quite happily and do it. Yeah. So if you're starting out, you need to learn that skill quite quickly. Yeah. Difficult when you're younger because obviously when you're younger, you know everything. But as you get older, it will really, really help you through your career.
Yeah, I mean, it's one core life skill that can sort of support you in any way you go, is being able to work with people. So yeah, cool. Wow, that was a journey. So I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much, Steve, for joining me. It's actually been it's been a pleasure considering how long we've been on for. I didn't realise how long we've been talking until I looked down at the clock.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, I realised the sun's going down. Not quite, but like we've been here a while. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. And I guess, I mean, we found each other on LinkedIn. We can obviously, if people want to find you and chat to you about your experience, I'm guessing we could put your LinkedIn link somewhere in the description. We can do that. And yeah, I mean, thank you very much. And I wish you all the best with the next 3, 6, 9 months, and get you to 3 years at KCS and see where you're going to go beyond there. I'm interested to follow your career.
I think I'll just stay here. I think it'd be easy if I just do that.
Yeah. Your CV's going to get no longer now.
That's it. Yeah, I'm done.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve, and I'll speak to you soon. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Steve, for joining me this week, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Morning Cuppa Podcast. If you like this week's episode, be sure to go ahead and leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast from. That will help us get in front of even more transport professionals just like you. As always, I do love chatting to other transport professionals, so go ahead and find me on LinkedIn, Instagram. The links will be somewhere. That's all from me. Once again, thanks for listening to the show. I've been Alan, and this has been the Morning Cuppa Podcast.